Hey everybody, my name is Matt Iavani and I'm a partner at Full Funnel, and I'm going to show you how I use clay.com and otter.ai in conjunction with N8N and built a completely automated recruiting workflow from application to hiring manager interview, and I'm really excited about what we created. The thing that I feel like the recruiting and talent market needs to hear is that Clay can be an incredible game changer for the efficiency at which you run your recruiting and human capital operations. This is a tool that is traditionally consumed by sales and marketing individuals. However, you can apply this to recruiting in a really interesting way. So the first thing is a little bit about Clay. It's a data operations, workflow operations platform that is interoperable with over 150 different data platforms and tools. It's also interoperable with some of the best AI tools from Anthropic, OpenAI, so on and so forth. Cool thing about Clay is it's not a per seat platform, right? So it's not like an ATS or a CRM, but it will integrate with those tools, and it is a metered through product, which means it uses a credit-based system. The more credits you consume, the more it costs. It also allows you to build effectively workflows that can do what normal human beings do by using AI agents. And so the thought process is like at the core of any, whether it's a sales and marketing program or a recruiting program, all of these programs are just sequential actions taken over different medium to which you try to get to an end conclusion. Once you understand the workflow process, you can then start to convert it into an automation. So the first thing here is I want to just kind of look at this in more granular detail. So I'm going to go to the Lucid chart that we have here. The first thing that we do is we essentially build a connector using N8N to essentially go in and grab the applicant file at the end of whatever cycle we want it to happen, every day, every week, at the conclusion of a job post, whatever it might be. LinkedIn Recruiter is what we use. You can do this in an ATS system, but however it is, you want to essentially get the XLS file over and into a CSV. We use a very easy N8N workflow to do this, where we get the XLS of all the applicants, converts to a CSV file, and then it moves into Clay. Now, inside of Clay, what we're doing is we're essentially bringing these applicants into a Clay table, and we're building logic inside of the row that allows the columns to run to effectively dissect a resume and an applicant. This is the cool part of what Clay can do, essentially, is you can reverse engineer all the different things that you would want to look for in a potential candidate. And ultimately, those attributes, you can build workflow processes to do those checks. So as an example, if you want to hire a RevOps person that has experience with Salesforce, you can look for Salesforce on their resume. You can also look at the last 2 places that they've worked to see if they use Salesforce as a CRM system. There's a number of different workflows that you can use, everything from scanning the text on a resume, looking at their credentials, and really building your own framework for how you would qualitatively and quantitatively measure a candidate's fit for that particular role. And so what you're seeing here is that we are looking at things like education history, past companies, the courses, the certs that they've done. And in each one of these, we're using, in this instance, an OpenAI product. And so just like every other sort of Clay column, when you go into the column, you can actually see the sort of prompting and the scripting of how you're going through this, right? And so the nice part about the process within Clay is that you can manipulate and augment each individual column or each individual process to be more iterative and optimized as you sort of continue your recruiting program. And so what we have here is you can see that I had 416 applicants for this particular job, and I was able to run this table in what probably took 3 to 5 minutes and get it down to the 8 candidates that had the highest probability of being great candidate fits for our particular role. Now, this is interesting because we have hired 2 of these candidates who are excellent and doing very well. What's interesting is that once you get through that sort of boil where you take 418 applicants, because we know everybody just applies to everything, very few people actually take the time to look at the job, make sure they're a good fit, etc. The next thing that I want to do is I want to say, are you a fit or are you not a fit, right? If you're not a fit, I'm going to send you a breakup email. We'll use Instantly in our case, but if you have an ATS system or any other system that does this, you can just connect it there, and then that ends. If it's a fit, however, then you need to go and essentially have somebody speak to a candidate, right? Understand the actual person, not just the resume. And in a lot of instances, folks will use human beings to do this. I have found this to be incredibly cost ineffective, very fragmented, and it's just a really bad process. So we essentially looked to a partner, and we ended up working with otter.ai to build the first AI recruiting screening bot that they had built. And I'm really happy to announce that it works exceptionally well. And so what ends up happening is the Otter bot itself is going to take a fit candidate. We're going to give them a unique URL, which is going to be their Otter agent URL. We just built sort of a system algorithm that does this, not too crazy. And what's going to end up happening is that is actually going to end up in an email that goes to the candidate. Now, the way that we sort of position this is that we're an AI native, organization. Like, this is what we do. And so we're explaining this is why we do things the way that we do. But more importantly, we're trying to highlight the inefficiency of a recruiting sort of workflow, which is that when you do a screen, you have to set up a time, which is usually during normal business hours, with people who are probably working. And even if you do set that time up, the reality is most of the people who you have screened to have great resumes, they very well may not have done any research about what you do, what you're looking for. They may be terrible candidates. And so now you're going to consume human capital time. You're going to elongate that time to hire. You're just going to add sort of inefficiency to the process. And what our argument here is like, hey, we've looked at your resume. You look like a really great fit. We want you to interview with this AI tool just to make sure it's a good fit for you and us. And you can do so on your schedule. This is the best part of it, is you can do it anywhere at any time. And for Full Funnel, we're a global company. We got employees everywhere. So having that flexibility is amazing. And most of the clients that we're working with that are doing this now, they also have this global workforce. So once they get that email, what ends up happening is they'll go through an actual screen with an Autobot that we've called Blarney. And what ends up happening is that we have programmed Blarney to go through a specific framework for a screen, and you can do this in pretty much whatever format you want as a company. And then Otter actually allows us to build scoring inside of their platform so that you can essentially see what's going on inside of the interview. Additionally, once you've scored that, you can aggregate those scores for a pass-fail. So the cool thing here is after the Otterbot has screened the candidate, it gets scored and then mapped back to the Clay table. So now we essentially have all of the folks that have submitted applications. We've used AI sort of scoring logic to rip them down from 418 applicants to 8 individuals. And now we've actually screened them digitally. Now we have essentially scored that screen. And in the event that you're going to pass, which for us is, I think, a 20 out of 30, you're going to then move into one of two things. If you fail, you're going to be sent an automated sort of close process. Again, email, thank you for screening. We don't think it's the best fit, so on and so forth. And in the event it is a fit, what ends up happening is an email is sent to the individual to book a time on the hiring manager's calendar. And then the hiring manager is going to receive what is essentially a brief that is being generated out of Clay and then piped to them via email. And so this particular candidate, this was their role fit, their seniority, experience, so on and so forth. You can watch their screen call. You can look at their LinkedIn profile. So when the person gets to the hiring manager's calendar, they have everything that they need in order to have a productive meeting with that individual. So that's essentially how we built a completely automated recruiting workflow process using Clay and Otter.ai. It's something that's completely plausible to be doing with the tools today. And I really think that every organization should be looking at how to activate strategies like this so you lower your cost of recruiting and capital management, but you also increase the efficacy of it because you can run these programs 24/7. And when you're doing that, you can be very focused on qualitatively like jacking up the criteria. So you're only getting the best people to actually get into these hiring manager interviews. And that's kind of the vision for this type of workflow. Once again, I'm Matt Iavani, I'm a partner at Full Funnel, and I hope you enjoyed this. See you later.